mask all times.
Wear a Hvac suit. Make sure you're wearing a good hat.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I try to stay outside mostly.
People who haven't done it don't really understand how disgusting old houses are behind the walls and in the attic. Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, a weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Sawhorse editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Matt Milham, deputy editor, Kiley and Patrick, design editor.
Hello.
And producer Jeff Rose.
Hey.
Please email us your questions at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Wow. It's good to see you all.
It's nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Matt, it's been a long time since you've been on the show. What have you been doing?
What have I been doing? A lot of garden stuff. I'm trying to think what I've been doing building-wise. Worked on the gazebo a little bit. I did the fascia for that, which was a little bit, I don't know.
Is every piece different, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so every piece is a different length. Bisecting the angles for every corner, because every corner is a different angle. So,
do you ever regret that shape? Do you ever regret your design plan there?
I mean, again, the shape was sort of dictated by the roots.
That's
so
true.
I didn't really have a lot of, I tried to get 6 in there, and there was just really no way to make it work. It would be just as wonky, just 6-sided. That said, 6 wonky sides would still be easier to work with than 5 wonky sides. So, yeah, it's hard to say.
What you don't know is when you're not on the podcast, we make fun of you all the time about how you make everything harder than it is.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. Why not? But, I mean, creating sort of like puzzles for myself, it does make it a little more interesting, but also frustrating at times. Like, I end up boxing myself into corners where I just can't, yeah, in a sense. I mean, like for the fascia, originally I was thinking originally I was going to miter everything, and then I was like, I'll just butt it. It's easier. And then I realized there's absolutely no benefit to butting these, because I still have to figure out the angle to cut everything at so that, it looks neat.
There's no gaps corners, in the back, right?
Yeah, and then because nothing's 90 degrees, so butting that doesn't really help anything. So,
are you going to go for the miters then?
Oh yeah, I did. I mitered it all. It's fine.
Cool.
So what's left?
I'm going to do a canvas cap up top. So that's the last thing. I just need to get my sewing skills.
That kind of turns it into a yurt, doesn't it?
Well, it's only going to be maybe 2 feet on each side or something like that. That's cool. A 5-sided peak, a little hat. So, yeah.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, me neither.
Are you really going to cut that fabric and make it fit and sew?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's definitely going to be odd. I mean, I'm not like a professional sewer of any kind. I've never
you work with some.
Never made a dress. Yeah, Heather's pretty good, but I mean, we're trying to figure out exactly how to make it fit on a roof that has 5 unequal sides, and the pitches are all over the place and it twists. I mean, when you look at it from like any particular plane, I mean, the pitches, look like they cross each other as you're looking from like one up, sort of like one ridge to the next, up one hip to the next. So.
I think you need to use some cheap fabric to make a template up there on the roof and then sew the real thing, right?
Yeah, well, I bought some just like the canvas that you use for drop cloths. That's what I got. So we'll see. That's relatively cheap. Hopefully it works.
This has been quite the odyssey, my friend. I love it.
Yeah.
That is the right word.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Kiley? What have you been doing?
My extracurriculars have nothing to do with my house right now, but I am working on K&B, and I'm super excited about some of the stories that are going to show up in it. One in particular is a kitchen in Indiana, and the guy and his crew exposed this beautiful timber frame, and they use this really interesting technique to restore it, dry ice blasting. Do you guys know anything about that?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I have to write the sidebar today, so I'm going to learn more about it. But anyway, this kitchen is so eclectic, and it has such a wonderful story as to why they wanted to do what they did. And he essentially he essentially exposed the original timber frame, reconfigured it as a freestanding structure, and then built a second double wall all around it. So it's really interesting construction wise, but it's also just a really good looking kitchen. So it's one of many stories in our new this year's Kitchens and Baths issue that I'm pretty excited about.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Jeff? You still fixing windows?
Oh, yeah. An ongoing process.
That's the problem when you find one of them, and then you know the others are all rotted.
Yeah,
Also,
and
right?
it's particularly up on the second floor where you can't see them.
So why worry about it?
It's only a problem when it falls
Complete
out.
lack of flashing, for one.
Yeah.
Jeff, how old is your house?
It's like 20 years, 18, 20 years old, somewhere in there.
Do you think the construction methods have led to the windowsills rotting more rapidly than they would have, or is it just wood windows rotting?
I think it's primarily just wood windows rotting. It's what happens from there that's because of the construction methods.
Did they flash the head casing on your wood windows?
I don't know.
I just wonder if there's something at work, or like sills have water sit on them for a long time. People don't realize.
I think, and that's where most of it is. I mean, like the one that I started with in the office here, it was underneath where the screen sits. So it just and there's screws that go up into the side casing.
Yeah.
And so that's just a nice little pathway.
And the screen is gonna trap dirt there, and
yeah.
And who the heck wants to paint their windows every couple years? But that's probably what you really need to do to keep them from rotting.
Yeah.
Or move.
Move every 3 years.
That's been my mode.
Well, it's time to paint. Time to move.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have little report except that the labor force here at the McHomestead has been very busy. I think the last time I talked to you guys, Liam was fastening decking down, and that went pretty well. One of the blessings of my job is I get access to tools that most people don't, and I gave him a quick drive screw gun, which is a collated deck driver. And it's got a long handle on it so you can stand up while you're using it, and I think he liked that a lot. It is a pretty amazing piece of equipment.
How many hours was he at it?
Oh, I bet it didn't take him a half an hour. The deck is only 5 by 7, so
okay.
Where
is it, Patrick? Where
on the back of the house.
Backside. Cool.
Don't tell anyone.
To hide it from the inspector.
It was a repair.
So we got some great feedback about past issues this week. Ed writes in the podcast 263, Austin asked about what he can do to know about code requirements. Taunton, you may have heard of them, publishes code checkbooks. These guides are useful for knowing what needs to happen at micro and macro levels of work, electrical, plumbing, etc. They're easy to use, but they are really not geared for DIYers. They help DIYers in determining a gap of knowledge. This should encourage the DIYer to find additional, more detailed resources. You should really encourage DIYers to get unlimited subscription to FHB. It is well worth the cost. Mistakes in home renovation are costly. The articles and videos available through the unlimited subscription are very helpful, curated content. The value of the curation can be measured in the amount of time you spend on YouTube watching videos that aren't good or even safe. Keep up the great podcast. You should have Kiley host once in a while. Keep craft alive. I totally agree with that sentiment. Kiley, you should totally...
I pass. Nope.
I'm just going to just step away from the mic one day, and you're going to have to take over.
Please never do that.
Never do that. Well, Ed, thanks for the ringing endorsement of the code check books. Long before I worked at Taunton, I was a huge fan of those, and they definitely put me in a better spot with my local inspectors in Pittsburgh. They make a lot of sense the way they're set up. It's arranged by the order of construction, the electrical version, for example, starts with the service entrance coming into the house and then goes through the house. The Building one starts with a foundation and, it just goes through the logical process. And God, they just make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Do you guys still find yourself referring to them?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. The one I really like is Code Check Complete, which combines 4 of them in a hardcover, and they're all like spiral bound, so you can open them up, and they're made of laminated stock, so they don't get damaged. They're freaking awesome.
Yeah. And they're really short. I mean, the code books themselves are, hundreds, maybe thousands of pages if you have the, commentary version. And these are like, 20 to 40 pages or something like that. The individual, like if you go for the electrical or whatever.
It's a little light reading for you, Matt,
it's
right?
sort of like it basically is like a checklist. I mean, that's why it's called Code Check, I think. It's just a checklist of all the things that,
you're going to mess up.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, they're great. You seen these, Jeff?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think it's more like, it's like, okay, these are the things you need to look up to make sure you're doing right.
Yeah, and then they have the actual code sections referenced with their, condensed version, right? So if you do want to go deeper, it's easy to look it up. Thanks for that suggestion, Ed. And you all heard him. Get the FHB Unlimited subscription. It's going to save you money. And that's not according to me. Ed says so. And this is from Rick. Kiley, Patrick, Rob, and whomever else you rope in. In the last podcast, a listener wanted to know about amateur versus pro tool selection and bag secrets. I was a serious DIYer and then spent a year as a handyman, and yes, a few nuances did surface with the transition. As mentioned on the cast, plumbing, electrical, masonry, etc. kits are very useful, but the evolution for me was to keep the right mix in my always carry bag, which made a huge efficiency difference. After about 5 attempts, I settled on a 25-pound of over-the-shoulder cloth, plastic, leather tool bag to save customer services. Surprisingly, Husky was the winner. I kept the things in there you would imagine, like pliers, 8-inch crescent wrench, pencil, etc. But all the tools below may be instructive to DIYers. 6-in-1 screwdriver, not the all-in-one wonder kludges. A 2-inch deck screw can solve many problems in a pinch, but a carefully set of fasteners in the bag makes jobs go quickly. 6x32 electrical screws, switch plate screws, long strikes, plate screws, wall dogs. What the heck's a wall dog?
I'm guessing that's like a hollow wall anchor, maybe? I don't know.
Drywall coarse thread screws, wire nuts, etc. An egg beater drill plus drill bits for weight, since I'm normally only drilling 3 holes. So he's talking about a hand drill, right? A sharp foldable fine pull saw, as well as a drywall saw. Circuit transmitter and receiver, as well as a pen-sized voltage detector. Roll of blue tape. 20 feet of 3mm cord. Telescopic magnet, like you're working on a car, can save a 30-minute store run. That is a great suggestion. A small LED-based flashlight. A small laser measure. Work mix drives much of this, but most short jobs require my standard bag plus 1 kit. As far as brands, you generally get what you pay for. Buy once, cry once. Keep your attic sealed.
Man, that sounds like a heavy bag that he carries around.
Oh my God, they're all heavy.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You need 2-3 dozen hand tools, and God, it's heavy.
Yeah. I can't wait till Andy Engel shows up to my house. I'm going to be investigating his bag, see what he's got.
I just start taking stuff out of it and hiding it. Just screw with his mind. I take a picture of what he carries around.
I will. I thought that would be kind of interesting. I will.
In my experience, I've not worked with Andy a lot on stuff like that, but he's pretty good about selecting just the stuff that he needs and, bringing it in like a bucket or bucket boss or whatever. So
I try really hard to think that stuff through, but inevitably, if I try and travel light, I leave something at home I need. And if I travel heavy, I don't need any of the extra crap. So I don't know what the right solution is.
Yeah.
What do you carry your hand tools in, Matt?
I've got a couple bags. I've got a Husky bag, actually, probably very similar to that guy, maybe the same one. Just because you can put a ton of stuff in it, like more than I can probably carry. And, it seems to hold up. It's got a pretty stiff bottom. It's got, I think, little feet. So, like you said, it doesn't mar floors. And I can it's got little pockets on the inside and on the outside. So you can kind of put smaller things that you need to keep organized in all those little slots. Some stuff's does get a little bit lost, or if the bag's really packed with stuff, it can be a little hard to get some of that stuff out or dig your fingers into it.
Yep.
But overall, it's just a great way to get stuff to and from, because it's got a nice carry strap and you can just throw it over your shoulder like a duffel bag, like you're going to the gym, and that's, you know.
And you need to go to the gym to carry it.
Right, exactly. And then other smaller bags for like the big tools, or like circ saws and stuff like that. I'll carry separately from that.
Do you just kind of keep your stuff in your truck so that you're just ready to go at any time? Or do you haul it and unload it and pack it back? I mean, you're not doing residential work on a day-to-day basis, so I guess maybe you just keep it in your
No, in the old days, like before I started working at Taunton, I would just keep it in the back of my Subaru. And, I had more than one bag. All my stuff pretty much would just stay there because it was pointless to bring it in and out all the time.
It's exhausting and it takes forever.
Well, and it's pointless because I'm just going to put it right back again.
In the morning,
you know? So like on the weekends, I would clean all the fasteners and sawdust and stuff out of it. But otherwise during the week, if I couldn't leave it on a job site, I would just, throw it in the back of the car. I don't know. These days it all just lives in the garage.
Yeah, me too. And when I go to do side jobs, I put the stuff in the back of the truck, and I have to, work on a good day. Rainy weather is not an option, really. Mm-hmm. I have a Milwaukee pack out set up that I think it's the 15-inch open top carrier, and I for a long time used a bucket paws, and I find that having individual pockets lets you know when something's missing. Because if you just have a toolbox or a bucket or whatever, like inevitably you're going to get somewhere and not have something you need. And this at least lets you know that you need to get one before you show up somewhere. Yeah. This is from Carol. Hello, I thoroughly enjoyed the podcast with Dejah Leger. It's encouraging to see more women entering the trades and excelling at them. My question to her and other women in the trades is, how do you go about entering the workforce, and where did you train, study, etc. in order to do so? I've always enjoyed working with my hands, making things, creating art, etc., and have often thought about what it would be like if I had been introduced to carpentry at a younger age. I grew up at the old school way in which girls were taught home ec and boys were taught wood shop and auto repair. I also have a background in graphic design and fine art, and am very drawn to carpentry and other aspects of building. However, where I live, Sierra Foothills, there are very few, if any, resources nearby for hands-on learning. I have learned a lot from working on my own house, reading and watching videos, but I want to make sure I learn the right way to do things, and have come to realize that absolutely nothing goes the way it does in a book or video. There are always problems that pop up that throw the proverbial wrench in my well-laid plans. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So I went to Dejah to ask, because she's the right one to ask.
Go to the source,
Yeah. So she responded, that's awesome, Carol. It sounds like you'd be a really good fit in carpentry. I really do believe it takes an artistic eye and that it is a creative craft. I'm 39 and only gotten into this trade at 37, so as much as I wish I had discovered carpentry sooner, there's no reason either to not pursue it as a career at any age. I was very lucky to be trained directly on the job by two other lead carpenters I work with. I shadowed them both for a year and learned on site. I continue my own education on my own time with videos, books, articles, subscribe to Fine Homebuilding and JLC Magazine for sure. The company I work for is not union, and that's an important distinction. If you're going with a union job, an apprenticeship program is a set amount of years in training. You come out of the apprenticeship a very good carpenter and move into journeyman role. Unions, at least here in Seattle, tend to work more on the new construction jobs. The pay scale is transparent and set by the union. Working for the private sector, I was able to accelerate at my own pace and take on lead roles sooner, but the pay scale is all over the place and there's less formal training, if any. But there's also more freedom in controlling my own work sites and establishing deep relationships with other trades we contract with, as well as with my work crew. Either way, the best advice I can give is to leap in and go for it. Remember that many, many men apply for jobs they have no qualifications for and don't even care.
So true.
I count myself among those men.
Oh,
that's funny. Yeah. Don't get hung up on experience on how you're going to learn. Just be honest about your background and be open to learning. We women are trained mentally and culturally to want to overqualify and overachieve, and sometimes let those expectations of ourselves get in our own way. Joining a boys' club is intimidating, but I've had nothing but positive experiences and formed great friendships, and I hope you become a carpenter that you will have the same accepting experience. Please feel free to keep in touch and let me know how the journey goes. Go for it. Dejah, that was fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
Do you want to read Mason's letter? Because it was to you, Kiley.
Oh, all right.
Thanks.
He's with Hudson Valley Preservation, which is nearby to us. People often ask if we find anything of value in old house walls, like a hidden cache of cash. In almost 40 years of renovating, I've never found anything that could be exchanged for a profit. We have found cool pottery, assorted kids' toys, and even a letter from the builder of a house in 1845 titled "To Future Generations." We found a lot of dirt and disgusting fiberglass insulation riddled with mouse tunnels and all that they leave behind, carcasses. I can't say those other words.
We know.
We know. The attached photos show a phenomenon first encountered on the 1780 house you've expressed an interest in writing about. Stay tuned to GBA for more.
Okay.
The mouse poop photo shows a pile up against a beam. Nothing too unusual. However, what happens next raises the grossness level to new heights. We noticed staining on the floorboards below. The poop had liquefied and penetrated the adjacent wood and dripped down. We have cleaned the area, and the next day it continues to ooze. Or we had cleaned the area. I don't think I need to mention that it stinks, but you can smell the smell outside of the house. My takeaway? Have you ever been in a house and there's a mystery brown stain on the ceiling? The questions are, is the roof leaking? Is there mold? I have often speculated that it could be rodent activity, and now I have proof. Ha! We'll clean it and spray it again today with microbial solution and hope we can stop the ooze. I will be visiting this house next week, and we'll report back on whether...
Wear your N95 mask all the times.
Wear a Hvac suit. Make sure you're wearing a good hat.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I try to stay outside mostly.
People who haven't done it don't really understand how disgusting old houses are behind the walls and in the attics and in the crawl spaces. There is no dirt like that, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't even know how old it has to be, because it took me a long time to figure out that I have a similar thing going on in my house. And I mean, it was a good year before I figured out exactly what it was, because I thought it had something to do. Originally, when we bought the house, there was a bath fan that wasn't connected to anything. It was just blowing right into the attic insulation. And I was like, that must be the problem. So I, put in ductwork, fixed all that. Cleaned up the ceiling, did all that, and it was still happening, and I could not figure it out. And that's exactly what it is. It was all of the piles of mouse junk that was up there that I had vacuumed out and cleaned up. It was still leaching through. I spray foamed on top of the drywall, cleaned underneath the drywall again, repainted it, still coming through. Like, there's not a thing I can do short of probably replacing the drywall that will actually take care of it.
Wow.
I wonder if an oil-based primer would solve that problem.
I bought a can of that, and I'm going to try that too. So that's the next one, because I really don't want to rip out all that drywall.
Yeah.
It's one of my least favorite things to do.
Can you smell it?
Not anymore. He's been living with it for 3 years.
If you like put a paper towel on it and wipe it off, and you were to smell it, it would just smell like mouse pee.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Yuck.
It's so gross.
Yeah.
Well, on that pleasant note.
Yeah. It makes me want to do some remodeling, right? So this is a question from Kevin in Des Moines, Iowa. Hello, Fine Homebuilding. I'm in the process of researching the best way to seal my ductwork throughout my house. We live in Iowa where the winters are very cold and the summers, especially right now, are hot and quite humid. Our house was built in the 1930s and is 2 stories, so the second story is quite warmer during the summer than the rest of the house. In my research, I stumbled on the AeroSeal product that seals any leaks and penetrations in your ductwork from the inside. The other option would be to manually seal the exposed ductwork with mastic and tape. This option is significantly cheaper, but you're limited to only the ductwork that you can reach. I looked through the GBA forums regarding AeroSeal and actually found Patrick's question from back in 2014. The reaction in most of the forums seemed to be pretty mixed, with a lot of people not able to justify AeroSeal's high price tag. Since we're looking for more of a comfort solution as well as a slight payback for energy savings, it is harder to figure out how much I'm willing to spend on the AeroSeal product. Patrick, can you elaborate on what you learned back in 2014 about AeroSeal, and have you learned of any updates since then? I think I'm learning towards the DIY mastic and tape solution at this point. So I asked the question on what it costs and can you get it, and hoping that folks from all over the country would respond on GBA that they were able to hire a contractor or not. And I know there are a bunch of contractors, at least a few dozen now, who are doing this process. And what it involves is pressurizing the house with a blower door and setting up what looks like sprinkler heads throughout the house connected to a pump, a very sophisticated pump, I might add. And they blow the sealant into the house, and the duct system is similar, except they're blowing it into the ductwork and they're pressurizing the ductwork similarly. So I forget what the duct product is called. There's
Aero seal, as opposed to aero barrier.
Thank you, Matt, for clarifying that. So the aero barrier is a product that is the one that's sprayed to air seal the house, not the ductwork. And aero seal was ductwork only.
So does it just leave a layer on the inside of the ductwork? Like how much of a layer is it?
Well, so it depends. What happens is, as you pressurize the ductwork and blow in this sealant, of course it wants to go out the biggest holes first, right? And so it starts building up, occluding the openings until those are closed off or get smaller, and then it starts forcing the sealant into the smaller holes until ultimately it's theoretically sealed all the holes in the ductwork. I think it's amazing technology. The one problem is that most ductwork is done very bad from the get-go. It has problems beyond just holes in it. It's sized improperly. It has convoluted runs. So before you invested in this sealing process, I would want to make sure that the ductwork was actually designed correctly and well executed. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to seal it up, but it's not necessarily going to perform any better, right? So, I mean, AeroSeal is super cool. I think for the right situation, it makes sense. The aero barrier is even cooler in my estimation. But you need to have someone make sure your ductwork is done well. Anyone else want to pipe in on this?
Well, I mean, it seems like his main thing is, there's a lot of places where you can't access the ductwork. So it sounds like he has a reluctance to actually tear out, ceilings or chases or whatever is required to actually make
them work.
Make them work and make sure that the ductwork is what should be there. I don't know of a way, and maybe there is, maybe of how to analyze the existing ductwork to figure out if it's doing what it's doing. Do you just check out what the airflow is at the various registers, or how does that work?
Yeah, and you need someone who's got some diagnostic skills to put a manometer on the ductwork and see what the pressure is. You want the minimal static loss. So if you have a bunch of bends or the ductwork is too restrictive, you're going to have higher static pressures, and no matter what you do, you're not going to improve the comfort of the house.
Yeah,
but this is solvable, but you need an HVAC contractor that's savvy in this stuff, and admittedly, they're hard to find.
I feel like you guys mentioned HVAC systems as being incorrectly done on a regular basis.
Because they are.
Why? Why is that?
I don't know, Kylie.
I feel like I can't trust any HVAC guy I might hire in the future.
It's really HVAC has only really gotten its start since the 50s and 60s, I would say, right? When air conditioning started becoming more mainstream. And I would say the trade is still inexperienced. Plumbers have been plumbing for more than 100 years. Electricians have been doing electrical work since at least the turn of the 20th century. We're still learning, and I would say part of the problem is that the things they teach HVAC techs is not enough. They need to know more about buildings and building diagnostics, because when you're sending pressurized air through a house, you're potentially exacerbating any existing problems, right?
I just want to add, it seems to me like looking at ASHRAE fundamentals. I mean, I think you probably have to have like a master's or a PhD in math just to understand what the hell is going on in that book.
I believe that.
And so, I mean, to, put that in the hands of someone like me who does not have that, and to then try to interpret what the heck is going on. I mean, it I spend more time looking things up just to understand what the terms are. Never mind, like figure out exactly how to do it right.
The calculation.
I think computer software has the potential to help, designers of HVAC systems, but they have to trust it. It's estimated that most systems are double the BTUs that they need to be, and that has a whole host of other problems. And then you combine that with undersized ductwork, and things just don't work.
Mm.
So I'm going to ask listeners, what is the problem with the HVAC trade? Anyone who wants to weigh in, I would love to hear it.
Well, we're going to get letters.
Awesome. How are we doing here? So this is Robert from Baden, Ontario, Canada. I'm finally writing into my favorite podcast. He spells favorite wrong.
Wait, sorry. I think you missed one, Patrick.
Oh, yeah. Nick,
oh, my bad.
Fort Wayne.
Oh, my God. I can't miss
Nick,
this one because this is Matt's ballywick.
I love that word.
This is Nick H. from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Hey, guys, my dad plans to remodel his bathroom, and I volunteered to help. The window pictured is in the shower, and he plans to get rid of it for obvious reasons. Due to an unfortunate parking job, we have found a stash of matching brick to patch where the window would be. Is that a mailbox post that is running? What is up with that? Is it a pillar?
Yeah. Matt, what do you think that's
some kind of a pillar. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell if it was like a light on top of it, like a light post.
But somebody creamed this thing, and consequently, he has a bunch of brick. I have no experience with bricklaying, and I thought I could figure it out. My question is, what would be the best way to build a patch? Thanks, guys. I love the show. So you're all over this, Matt. You went and saw John Carroll cancel a window opening, right, or move it?
No, that was Andy Engel that did that. But I mean, that article that he did was called, I think, "Take the Fear Out of Brick Veneer," and that. I mean,
if nothing else, it's a fantastic title.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes through all the steps, and it's really not that hard. I mean, the article does do a good job of, I think, taking the fear out of that. And I mean, looking at this guy's situation, I don't see a lintel, so I mean, it doesn't seem like there's really anything, bearing on top of any of that stuff.
Yeah, but how would you see a steel lintel? You wouldn't see it, right?
Well, I mean, there's no brick above the opening at all for a lintel to be carrying. It doesn't seem like. I don't know what's up there. It may be just buried behind the soffit. But yeah, I mean, it looked like he'd probably have to remove about 24 bricks because he doesn't have. It's weird because there's not full bricks on the right side. The opening. You can see that the joints, like the
it didn't coincide with the natural head joints on the brick.
Yeah,
right?
It looked like the bond pattern started out right at the bottom, and then by the time they got to the window opening where it mattered, it had gotten off. So he'll have to remove a few more bricks than he would probably otherwise, just to make sure that looks nice and when he courses across. But it won't be that hard. You just drill a bunch of holes around the bricks that you're going to remove, and then you can pretty much, that sort of relieves the pressure on them, and then you just take a SDS plus drill or something like that and hammer out those other bricks. I mean, all those things are just pieces anyway. You're not taking out any full bricks. You're just taking out halves and 3/4. So it's not that hard. And then you just got to clean up all the faces. Mortar won't bond to mortar very well, so you need to clean those faces so that you're actually bonding to brick, and then fill it back in. It's really not that hard.
You're crazy. It's terribly hard.
It can be time consuming, but it's not exceedingly difficult.
I can tell you, I've done a lot of stuff, but I have had absolutely no success in masonry. I don't know. I'm just terrible at it. And, maybe it comes from no one ever teaching me.
A lot of it is just patience, because it takes a lot of time to do it right and not break the other bricks, because
I would just be happy if I could get the mortar to stick to things.
Yeah.
Instead of the ground.
Yeah. My little mortar job is pitiful. After a year, it looks terrible.
What is the secret to mixing mortar, Matt? How do you make it work?
Well, generally I try to make it as dry as possible, depending on what you're doing. But yeah, generally, I mean, you want it to stick generally I want it to stick onto the trowel when the trowel is, completely vertical.
Okay.
So if it's sticking there, then it'll stick on a brick pretty well. And you got to make sure that all the masonry units are damp when you're putting that stuff on them, so that because the dry mortar on those things tends to fall off a lot easier, it seems to me. But
so do you dunk your bricks in a bucket of water, or do you mist them?
Yeah,
What do you do?
sometimes I'll just soak them in a pan. Like when I just did my brick chimney, like I soaked those bricks for days before I did any of that. Yeah.
Really?
Did you know
Yeah.
that, Patrick?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily like something that you have to do, but
Mhm.
it's in this case because of, I just wanted to make sure that everything was going to stay damp, because you don't want the mortar to dry out too quickly, especially the kind that I was using, because I was using a lime mortar.
Because the bricks, if they're dry, will suck the water out.
They'll suck the water
moisture.
right out, and
Yeah.
lime mortar needs to stay damp for a week or more, really, to really carbonize correctly. So it was really just a measure to make sure that happened. If you're using, like type O mortar, it's probably not as critical to do that. But when you're using
Would you
lime
tell
mortar,
Nick to buy pre-mixed mortar, or would you tell him to buy brick cement and then mix his own?
I'd probably just tell him to buy pre-mixed stuff. I mean,
And what formula?
well, if you can figure out what is in there, match that. If you can't, type O is probably going to do it for
How
you.
would you figure that out?
You can have it analyzed. Somebody can, like take a chunk out and then, send it to a lab. I don't know. It's sort of beyond what I've ever done. I've never actually done that. Normally I just kind of try to match it as close as I can. And that can be a little time consuming. I mean, if you're trying to get it right, you go out, you buy a bunch of bags. Fortunately, the stuff's not that expensive.
Yeah.
And then you can just, mix up some batches, set some bricks, and let it sit for a few weeks, and whatever, because you're trying to match the color and the hardness, and then just go back and try to scrape it and see what kind of marks you get, and
What do you mean?
what kind of color you get.
What do you
So
mean?
he's describing how to check to see if it's a similar hardness to the existing mortar.
Right.
Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so
What's
you're
the
looking at the color
scraping
and the hardness of the mortar.
And what does the scraping tell you? I don't get the scraping part.
If it's really soft, then it scrapes, like, you'll be able to scratch it really easily with a chisel or a nail even. And if it's really hard, it may not leave a mark at all.
I gotcha. Okay.
And can I say it's safer to use a softer mortar than it is a harder one, right? Because you don't want an unyielding mortar, because you'll make the bricks fall in the winter. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and not even that, but also, I mean, there's that, but also if the building settles at all and that mortar doesn't give, those bricks are going to crack if the mortar's harder than the brick. I mean, mortar is essentially always considered sort of sacrificial, like that. You're going to need to repoint anyway. At some point in the future, it's never going to last forever. So yeah, you just want to make sure the mortar is always softer than the brick.
Does all of what you just said apply to Fieldstone too, or is this strictly in terms of?
Yeah, it would be any masonry. So whatever the unit is that you're trying to mortar in the unit should always be harder than the mortar that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
I think most Fieldstone is probably laid with lime-based mortars because of the time period. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything holding it together at all, I mean, a lot of stuff, I mean, probably the vast majority of walls around, our area of the country are just dry laid. So,
Jeff, have you done masonry?
A little bit, but never, systematically.
Yeah.
How successful were you?
I'm fairly successful, but again, it was never, it's like replacing a step, that kind of stuff, doing a piling, and that was just laying block and filling it.
Yeah.
That's what I've done, except a mason wouldn't call it laying block.
No.
I was doing.
Yeah. Stacking block and filling it.
Now, is your chimney all done now?
I'm going to redo the crown on it, but otherwise, yeah, what I'm going to do to it is done other than the crown.
I'll look forward to seeing it. That was a big
So
project.
you're going to cast a crown for it with concrete, or what are you going to do?
Yeah, that I am going to use basically premix concrete for.
That sounds easy.
Bag mix. Yeah, the fun part is getting it up on the roof.
Yeah, right?
How tall is that chimney? It's pretty tall, right?
It's probably 20, 25 feet maybe.
How will you get it up there? Seems like
Little
something you need-
buckets,
Really?
little batches. Yeah, mix
Okay,
it,
you
mix
it
a
in-
big
put it
batch,
in
and then
place. Okay,
I mean,
gotcha.
I'm not gonna. There are ways. There are like elevators and stuff that you can rent to move stuff like that. But I'm not gonna. This is my own house. I'm cheap.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna bring it up a little bucket at a time.
Heather's going to be losing her mind when you're doing that, I suspect.
Hmm.
This comes from, I don't know if that's at all helpful, Nick. Well, I'm sure Matt's suggestions are. Mine are definitely not.
Just read that article. That tells you everything you need.
It tells you how to match the mortar too, right?
I think it probably does.
Yeah.
I didn't read the whole thing, but John Carroll is aces.
The real deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's been doing this forever.
Yeah.
Decades.
Yep.
This is Robert from Baden, Ontario, Canada. I'm finally writing to my favorite podcast outside of my own called Dingers, which is about fantasy baseball. What the heck is fantasy baseball? Anyone?
Those are words I don't know.
I
know what it is, but I wish I didn't.
I'm writing in because I'm 98% finished with my addition. You ship stickers to Canada, right? 98% doesn't include interior or exterior trim, basement drywall, parging my stone foundation that's now an interior wall, the yet-to-be constructed deck, the driveway, the section of gate that's going to be converted to a fence, and moving the hydro from the air to the ground, and at the same time put in drainage that I wanted to be the focus of my email today. But I'll go for the 2% that's left to get occupancy.
Yeah.
So the 2% is the stairs that have a slight downward slope and the spacing between my spindles. Balusters also sound simple, right? Well, I have 160 spindles. Every other spindle is secured with an anchor. See the photos. The steps that I built myself to seem like a simple fix, and possibly this will be completed before you're able to help me. But I put lumber lock on each stringer and used finishing nails to hold the treads in place, and I did not step on them for a day. What happened to get them out of level was the lumber lock wasn't switched down enough with the finishing nails and created a slope on roughly 23 of the 30 plus steps. Awesome. I think the fix is simple. I popped the stairs loose and used the riser or shims to level the step and re-secure with lumber lock, but this time I'll use a proper nail or screw on each tread so nothing stays out of level. Sound good? What's better? Rookie mistake, right? Like my proposed fix. To the spindles, maximum allowance is, let's talk about the treads for starters.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get them off, just do it again and then scrape the glue off the stringers, right? Like if the glue is going to come off either surface, get it off, I would say.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was trying to figure out what he meant by lumber lock. At first I thought he was talking about lumber lock screws. So
I think he's talking about construction adhesive.
Yeah, okay. That makes a bit more sense. There were some other deficiencies with those stairs that I noticed, and I wasn't sure if his inspector caught it or not, but like he forgot to, well, like, at the landing, there's a turn and then the stairs continue up, and it looks like he forgot to account for the finished flooring on that riser. So it's significantly shorter than the next one, which generally
is a
wouldn't
problem.
pass. Yeah.
Yeah. What you're allowed, what, was it
3/8
3/8 of an inch? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's maximum between any two. So
he's going to pull up all the treads, so it's going to be an opportunity to fix that problem as well, right?
yeah,
Because you can cheat
split the
a
difference.
little bit on every
Yeah.
tread and get the if
height.
you can get the risers within 3/8 of an inch, then you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like a wonky set of stairs.
Yeah. The problem is it looks like he's already cut his skirt for that. So that's going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt, but I don't know.
Will
Sorry.
they have to recut that? Something that start over again with
Yeah.
that? Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really important to get stairs correct. And something I learned from Andy Engel is to do a story pole, right? You get a hunk of wood, a stick, if you will, and you lay out every tread and riser on the pole, and you measure them to make sure that they're all the same, and that's going to save you a lot of expensive and time-consuming rework, as opposed to having to do it a second time.
Yeah.
And the rise at the bottom, the first rise, and at landings is different, right? Because you have you don't have the tread below, right? That's the difference.
Right. So it depends on if you're putting the stairs on the finished floor or on the subfloor, then putting finished flooring there. And then also at the top, where you're landing the stringer. I mean, you can have it so that there's, the last step essentially levels out with the floor above, or
you're stepping
a
onto
step below. It. Yeah. So there's a lot of things, a lot of configurations and a lot of things to account for.
Yeah. And, the first 3 sets of stairs I built, I got wrong.
Seems super tricky. I remember watching Josh in Cooperstown.
Mm-hmm.
Building.
Yeah, it's one of those things that once you learn it, you get it. But boy, it's easy to make mistakes the first few times you try it, right?
Pretty wild.
Yeah, and
okay.
he nailed it the first time, Josh.
Is that right? And that was a complicated set of stairs.
Well, and they were steel, so you don't want to mess it up. And plus, they're heavy. You're carrying in these I don't know how many hundreds of pounds each stringer was, but I mean, it took 4 guys to move each stringer.
That was insane.
Yeah.
All right, let's. Robert is now asking about his balusters. About the balusters, the maximum allowance is 4 inches at any point. So he's talking about they need to be close enough that they won't allow a 4-inch sphere to pass through at any point, and that's the stand-in for a baby's head is always my equivalent, right? I've done everything on this edition of outside the setting, the concrete forms, most of the framing, rough and electrical work, HVAC and plumbing. So I measured the base, which is flat and ensures no gap exceeds 4 inches. Well, we have these matched to our original staircase, and these 1905 spindles dip in a 1/2 inch in spots, so the gaps are now much as wide as 5 inches apart. Most will need to be moved. So a lot of times inspectors will allow you to leave existing conditions, but you've done this other stair, so they might make you change it, but I would ask. And if it's not a worry to you, if you don't have little tiny kids, it wouldn't be a worry to me. Maybe they'll let you leave that so you don't have to rework it. He says, I have laminate floors, and my wife's concern is how can I minimize the damage to the floors and elsewhere, since most of these will be moved and some 1/4-inch holes will be exposed. I have 100 other questions, but those 2 are what I'm doing this week in order to get occupancy to the addition. Can't stress how much I enjoy the podcast. I'm a chef by trade, but contractor wannabe, and this podcast scratches that itch along with both fine home building and fine woodworking. My Instagram account is questionable contracting because that's what my wife calls my work. I'm 37, so I'm calling myself young and on the rise. Appreciate any help. Well, I don't know how you patch the holes in laminate flooring. Anyone got a suggestion there?
I don't.
Jeff is looking like a deer in headlights. He's like, don't ask me what to do here.
I mean, can he cut little patches? Or he's not talking about screw holes. He's talking about little...
My guess is they're dowels or dowel screws, right, on the bottoms of the balusters, right? That's the way it's most commonly done. Right. And so if he has to move them, he's going to have the hole.
Right. I guess what I wasn't understanding is were the balusters in and the flooring cut around it, which would be a huge pain in the butt, or the ballast, they're right on top of the flooring. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, little plugs. You can get a plug cutter and cut yourself a bunch of plugs and stick them in. It may not be perfect, but it'll be better than nothing.
I forget what the brand of caulking that comes in 300 colors, but I would explore that and squirt some in there and hope no one noticed. Yeah. Hope no one said anything.
A nice bottom rail.
Hey, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a very good idea.
Yeah. The strip. Did you guys check out this house?
It's beautiful, right?
Oh. It has some really interesting architectural features. I wonder how long he's been working on it. And I wonder what year it is. He didn't say.
It's very pretty, right?
So pretty.
I think it's 1905 is what he says later in the email. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We had these matched to our original staircase, and these 1905 spindles, so my guess is that's the age of the house.
Okay, right.
What you got to remember is in 1905, nobody was paying attention to any of this stuff. These were aesthetic choices, not code choices.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be a pretty hard-nosed inspector that would make you change that, especially given the flooring situation. But it's not up to me.
Just hide your 2-year-old while they're there.
Right. No toddlers were hurt in the making of this staircase.
I'm curious about something that it looks like he's in the middle of. It looked like he was adding a Juliet balcony. Did you see that?
Yeah.
No, tell me about it.
Well, it just doesn't. It doesn't have any. I mean,
There's no
it certainly
guard on
isn't to code yet. So I'm just curious if that's something that he put on, and if he's, what the next steps are.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna get a CO without that. But
Yeah.
What, does he have like a board across the opening?
Not even.
on the ends, but across the front. I mean, if you were to step on to that balcony and take one more step, you would be
on the
about
ground.
Like
11 feet down on the ground.
If you have big feet, don't go out there.
Yeah.
I so want a Juliet balcony.
I do too. I've been thinking about them a lot, so I noticed it when I saw that.
Yes, there is.
What'd you say, Jeff?
I didn't look like there was a doorway, but maybe it is a door.
Yeah, at first I thought it was a window, but I'm pretty sure it's just a black door.
Yeah.
Or a door that sort of matches the siding, whatever that is.
How would you describe that architectural style? I thought it was so interesting. It's sort of like this weird mesh between an interpretation of a shingle style house and, a Victorian era house. It has so many. It's got like a cupola, double height porch. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
so, I mean, like,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
1905 is kind of transitional, right? We're moving
transitional
out of.
Would be the word for it. Yeah, it's got nice elements. I like that house.
Well, thanks for the kind words, Robert. Enjoy your home building, and I think you're doing a bang up job. And don't be discouraged by having to fix things, because it's always going to be still less expensive than paying people to remodel your house, right? All right. So this is from Joe from Des Plaines, Illinois, which is northwest of Chicago. Oh, no, it's not. This is name withheld by request. Hello, FHB podcast crew. I've recently discovered your podcast and I've enjoyed it a lot. So I figured I'd throw a question out for you guys that probably isn't podcast worthy. There is no question that isn't podcast worthy. But I was wondering if you guys might have some words of wisdom on it, since you're all knowledgeable in the entire home building / remodeling fields. Long story short, my brother and I have been in the high-end custom landscaping installation business for about 35 years between the two of us. And when I say landscaping, I mean paver stone driveways, modular and natural stone retaining walls, softscapes, as well as more production-style townhouse install work. What does he mean by softscapes? Are those plants, Kylie?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Let's see. We have management skills for running a job site and have general building knowledge, being that we run the crews as well as install with the crew members. We're both ready to leave the landscaping industry and decided we would like to be our own bosses and start a remodeling business. Now, our uncle has a remodeling business and has promised to show us and teach us as much as he can in the next 2 years or so before he retires. And the landscaping business is our family's business, so we both have a little experience in the basics of running a business, bidding and bookwork. Are you aware, or is there any programs, online preferably, you would recommend that we can take to expedite the learning curve on home remodeling in general? Again, my uncle was going to teach us hands-on, but it would be great to get some formal education on the industry as well. Appreciate any information you guys might be able to send my way. Thanks in advance, and keep up the awesome podcast. I'm learning just by listening to you guys. Well, thank you, name withheld by request. This is a great question, huh?
It is.
You go first, Kylie.
Well, I don't know that I have that.
You were a landscaper, gardener.
Well, I feel like his question is really aimed at like what resources can he make use of, and I can't help but think of Rob's. I mean, this is a little bit just grassroots, for lack of a better word, but the digitizing of all of the resources that we have into these guidebooks that Rob's putting together seemed like a good thing to study.
Yeah.
right?
So you're talking
formal,
about the web initiative to like kind of curate and group our content by area, right? So we've done drywall, we've done
paint. Well, he's working on painting now.
and was it roofing?
Decks. No, I think it was decks.
Decks, that's right. That was the first one. So we have so much stuff that someone needs to go through it and group it, right? And that's what we're doing now to make it make it easier to find things. And yeah, I agree. I think that studying by those topics is awesome. But there's also lots to know about running a business. And
Well, I feel like he's got that part down, don't you?
yeah, but I would, running a remodeling business has its own intricacies that need to be spelled out. Like contracts are everything. Pre-qualifying clients is very important. Like, with regard to, knowing the rules for paying taxes and workers and that kind of stuff, I'm sure that they're well versed in, but there's subtleties of running a remodeling business that are different than running a landscaping business.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean Van Dyke's stuff is very good.
Isn't there a book that you've recommended in the past along these same lines, like everything you need to know about? I can't remember.
So I'm a huge fan of the Elements of Building, and I'm sorry I forget that author's name, but he's a contractor and has been for decades, and these are all just little nuggets that he's learned through the School of Hard Knocks about the business of being a contractor. And some of them are real short, like, so if you're waiting for an inspector or waiting for your mulch delivery to show up or whatever it is, you open this book and you can read a little piece of it, and the lessons are fantastic. Can one of you guys look up that name of that, Elements of Building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will.
And then Renovation, the Litchfield book, I think is well done too, and it's got to be in its 4th or 5th edition because things do change. The code checks that mentioned earlier are fantastic resources, and I forget who it was who said that to subscribe to Fine Homebuilding All Access. I mean, I think there's that's what I did, but it didn't exist. I immersed myself when I was trying to teach myself to be a carpenter, and reading Fine Homebuilding and reading JLC and reading anything I could get my hands on. I'd go to the library and pull out the Odell's books from the 40s and 50s, and although some stuff had changed, the physical structures of houses have not. But just you gotta do your homework, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a hard time finding like an online curriculum that will sort of like walk you through everything you need to know. It's probably going to have to be a piecemeal, and it's hard to know what you don't know. But that's sort of the thing with remodeling. Everything you go into has all kinds of surprises. So, it's sort of like being able to anticipate those surprises. You really, need to, I don't know, bone up on, and I don't know how you would do this, but bone up on how various types of houses are constructed and the things to look out for, when you come across them, and how to repair or deal with various situations. I mean, really, problem solving is probably the biggest skill that you need to have as a remodeler.
Amen. And that's the fun part.
Yeah. And I mean, that's not necessarily something you can teach. I mean, maybe in some cases, like if you come across the same or similar situation multiple times, but I mean, a lot of times you're just kind of like making it up as you go. And I mean, but resources like Fine Homebuilding or JLC, where people have done a lot of, remodeling, or we have a lot of remodeling content, can kind of like get you on the right path toward figuring out what to do in various situations.
What do you say, Jeff? Have you come across the gold standard of online curriculum for teaching yourself to be a remodeler?
No, I haven't, but I think the idea of, getting a stable of good subs.
That's key. If you're going to be a successful contractor of any stripe, you absolutely have to have good subcontractors, and finding them can be a challenge. And when you do find them, you got to take care of them, and you got to keep them busy if you can.
How do you go about finding them?
God, I don't know. That's
word of mouth kind of thing.
I would say pay attention to. So if you find one good sub, ask them who the other good ones are, because likely they are crossing paths on well-run projects, right? And then you can see the good ones, right? And then you learn who the other ones are. So you just need to find one, and they can help you find others. And I would reach out to your contacts. I mean, I'm assuming that these folks are working for new home builders in many cases. Pay attention to who their subs are, because you're going to try and tease them away later on, right? You're going to want to get them on the line.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't try to do everything yourself.
Right. Mm. I've heard successful remodelers say to, like, do what you're good at. And that sounds very simplistic, but that means specialize in something and then do that. And you'll learn what the pitfalls are and what the ways to deal and manage client expectations, because you'll know the problems ahead of time. You'll know how to manage the job and the client, so they don't lose their minds. And everyone's happy when the project starts, but by the middle point or even a third of the way into it, it gets way more difficult, right?
The full title of that book, by the way, is The Elements of Building: A Business Handbook for Residential Builders and Tradesmen, and the author is Mark Kerson.
Sorry, Mark, I forget your name all the time, but you did a great job with that book, and I recommend it to everyone who asks. Have you read that, Kylie?
No.
It's just fun.
Yeah.
And it even for someone who doesn't aspire to be a tradesperson, it's edifying to learn what they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. It is not an easy job. It is just not.
I read a book along those lines. It wasn't a manual like that. It was actually like this. It was called, God, what's the title of that book? The Story of This Old House or something. And it was about the experience of the remodelers, all the subcontractors, the homeowner, the architect. It was really fascinating because everybody had their role. And
they're not always complimentary, right?
Exactly. There was a lot of stories of frustration.
What about the BPI materials you're reading? Like, because that's something that you can really distinguish yourself for the right clients if you have some knowledge of building science. What do you think about those things?
I think for somebody who's not well versed in these principles and ideas, I think it's great. I haven't finished the book yet; it's been on hold a little bit, but it's hard for me to gauge how rudimentary it is for somebody who is somewhat versed in those ideas. If that be the case, then you'll breeze right through it and nothing lost.
So how do you get those materials, Kylie, and what does it cost?
I mailed away for them, and I paid for the resource book and the exam, which I haven't taken yet, but it's all paid for. I just need to go online and take it. And that was $200. So it feels very reasonable.
That seems like such a fair price.
I will say that the resource book is excellent in terms of illustrations and photographs and simple language and,
Does it have a good index? Because honestly, books with a good index are way more valuable because you just don't read this kind of stuff front cover to cover, right? It's not that kind of book. You need to refer to them.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's true.
Is there a good index in there?
I actually, to be honest, I haven't really gone to the index. I've just been reading it page by page.
Well, because that book is meant to be that,
it's meant to be that. Yeah. That's how I approached it. I haven't. Yeah.
Well, that was fun. So we got this from Joe from Des Plaines, Illinois, northwest of Chicago. He says, "Hello, Fine Insulating Podcast. I found this fun article in the Popular Science Archives. I thought you might get a kick out of it. It discusses the new Arkansas standards in insulation. 12 inches of attic insulation. Are they mad? Actually, it is an interesting article right at the start of the energy efficiency programs. There's also an article in the same issue on heat pumps, the new way to heat and cool. The insulation article starts on page 130, and this is September 1976 issue of Popular Science. And we'll put the link on the podcast page for those of you who want to check it out. But what I found really interesting is that this is like, they're talking about air sealing. They're talking about insulation levels that we now regard as pretty normal. And when people say, well, we never did this, well, that's not true.
I was surprised by some of the information in there.
I loved it. I thought it was really fun. He says, I remember reading this in 1976, I was a strange 11-year-old, and
He has a friend in you, Patrick.
I was reading this stuff at the same age too. I totally was.
Isn't
And,
this one of your favorite publications?
I read more popular mechanics than popular science, and that might have been just my young brain. Mechanics, science, I don't know. It sounds too good for me, but mechanics seemed like that was something I would be into, right? But I did read a lot of popular science too. Did you guys remember these books?
No, but have you introduced Liam to them?
I probably should, huh?
You should.
Yeah. Do you remember these, Jeff?
I haven't looked at the books. I haven't looked at that, but I mean, certainly remember popular science and read those all the time.
Yeah. You, Matt?
I remember, you mean the magazines or were there books? Yeah, no, I definitely remember looking at them. I mean, I remember being like really into, I mean, like when the whole Star Wars, not Star Wars the movie, but like Star Wars the military program.
Yeah.
Like put, like weaponized satellites and stuff in space. I remember being really into that and all kinds of others, like UFOs and stuff that some of those magazines carried.
It seemed to me like every year they would have hovercrafts on the cover of Popular Science, and I'm still waiting for that to catch on. I want the vehicle that you can like go on the grass, you can go on the water, you can go on the highway, and like, where the hell's my hovercraft? That's what I want to know.
I think it's called a duck boat.
Well, I want that too.
You know what I noticed about this publication? It's 150. Wait, how many pages?
It was
194 pages.
It was huge, absolutely huge. I know. I found that interesting too.
What are we down to? 55?
No.
It's 100, right? Are we doing 100 pages, Matt?
Just under 100 pages, I think.
Yeah. Our magazine's still pretty big by many of the ones I look at, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun. And thanks for that, Joe. Any of you out there who find interesting stuff from the past that describes building science, it's always fun to read about that. We will take advantage. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Kiley, Jeff, and Matt for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for listening, and happy building.